Hello, friends. Today, I'm so excited to have Esther Pannebaker with me, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her recent book. Do you pronounce it No.Thing or Nothing?
Well, you know what? That's very interesting because there's a dot between the no and the thing. And everybody says, is it no.thing? And so that's how I pronounce it. And actually, I loved what you were doing with your little scripts that you've been doing, the audio portion of it. And I think that's how we connected because I was so interested in how you were doing your audio. So when we do the audio, it's going to be no.thing because a lot of us
Perfect.
have things in our lives that look like no's, but the dot represents the pauses or the waits, the
Nice.
periods in life. And I'm telling people in the book that the periods doesn't mean that it's the end of your story. It just might be the end of that chapter.
Oh,
And
I
to
love that.
yeah, to look at the pauses. And so it does have some meaning. And I talk about music in the middle of my book using that little dot there.
Oh, this is perfect. Well,
Yes.
first, tell us a little bit about your background and what kind of drew you to writing this book in the first place.
Thanks, Ashley, so much. I wish I could say I had like this huge background in a writing degree and that I always wanted to be a writer. But really how it started was when I was in high school, back in the day before cell phones were prevalent and Facebook and Instagram. I mean, can we even remember a day when we didn't have Instagram and Facebook? um,
I
I was
know. I can
I was
actually. I'm old enough. I do remember.
I was that perfect pen pal, you might say. I prided myself in how many letters I would get in the mail, how many letters I'd be writing. I had friends that I met through mail, and I would use those mailograms to across seas, to different people across the
Oh,
ocean.
yes. I remember
Yeah,
that.
and then I would, write people that I met at like church camp, summer camps. I would write people all over Indiana. I was from Illinois, Pennsylvania. I would write people from all over and find out about their part of the country and about them. I loved writing notes to people. And so it wasn't just the perfect pen pal, but I would also write notes to like my comrades, fellow students. Hey, just encouraging motivational little notes. I think you're the greatest. You're the best. You rock this. And I guess back in that day, it was like you're a rad. That was more the lingo back
Right.
then.
Yes,
um,
yes.
but I've always liked to write like little encouraging notes. When I went on my senior trip, I remember writing my mom a little note, and then so actually what kind of propelled me into formally writing was not my success, but my mistakes. And I heard a podcast this week about from John Maxwell. He's an inspirational and motivational coach. He's a life coach. But on his podcast, he was saying, our successes impress people, but it's our mistakes that impact people. And so it was actually my mistake in school that propelled me into writing. It was my mistake that I cheated in grammar class. It was when we
Oh,
were having to, yeah, we
was
were
not
having to
expecting that.
put, yeah, we were having to put all the periods and commas and, doing all the diagramming and doing all the punctuation. And I took a red pen and I was like marking strategically in this literary work where the periods should go, where everything should go. And then I was going to
Mhm.
put it, with pencil over the top of that red pen. And I was caught. I was caught. And I write about
Whoops.
this in my book. Yeah. I write about this in the red dot. I was caught. And but it propelled me because my English teacher worked with me on grammar and sentence structure. And from that date forward, gave me the tools that I needed to be able to construct sentences and to actually communicate well through writing. And so, Ashley, it was my mistake. It was my bad that was for my good.
That's incredible. I think we forget that at times.
We
And
do.
even like on a funny anecdote that even for me last night, I went to my first dance workout class in years or something, and I'm so used to wanting to be professional. I know my stuff for music. I love foreign language. I'm very in my head, but let's face it, physicality is not like my forte. Working out has never been my thing. I was just like, this is so hard. And my husband was really brilliant. He said, it's good for you to be in those hard moments because that helps you remember what your students feel like or what other people feel like when they're starting something new. And just, it kind of reminded me of that, exactly what you're talking about, that putting me back into a more vulnerable situation will help me
Right.
have better empathy when my students are saying, I don't understand something. And so I thought that was a good way to look at it when I was like, I'm the worst in the class, you know? So
Right.
that's a
Well,
good
and new things are
reminder for
always
us.
that. New things are always challenging and they're new. And so yeah, it was that propelled me. And I feel like our mistakes are can be used as stepping stones. And
Hmm.
that's how we learn. And it's not a bad thing, it's not a bad
Yeah,
thing to always be learning and always trying to do better. So that's how
I love that.
I was drawn to writing actually through that.
That's incredible. I've never heard a story like that. That's cool. Now, how has music played kind of a part in your life or influenced your book, since a lot of my listeners are big music fans?
I love music, Ashley. And I guess my first introduction to music would have been probably going to a church that, sang as a congregation. Music was a part of the worship. And then I sang with a chorale, a small group, and actually in a trio when I was 10 for the first time for public.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
and I loved the harmonies and the parts. And I think back then at that age, oh, how cool is this? This little girl can sing a harmony, and carry a part.
Yes.
And so
Oh, for sure. That's
I
hard at age
started,
10. That's really
I
impressive.
know that's how I started. And then I would sing in a lot of groups. And I talk about that in my book. In high school, we had a Augustana choir, which is the community college in Illinois where I grew up, and they did the whole entire Handel's Messiah, the whole oratory,
Wow. In
and
high school.
yeah, in high school. So at 16, I
Amazing.
auditioned for this, and they had the collegiate portion of the choir that would sing, several songs, and then they would have the soloists that would come in. They had all the instruments. It was beautiful. The harpsichord, the violins. It was just a gorgeous, gorgeous setting. And it was something that you had to audition to get into the portion that they had a community portion. There were about 500 voices that would
Okay.
sing this every year, and the town would would be tickets, and they would sell the house out. So it was quite a big ordeal to be accepted, and so I made the cut at 16, and I'm like, what am I doing? because because you talked about being a Suzuki learner, and
Yes.
I did take piano as a kid, but I would come home and just play the songs and
Mhm.
listen to the teacher
Was it
play them.
Suzuki or traditional or?
Well, it was traditional, but I was
Okay.
more Suzuki, but it was before Suzuki was more accepted, maybe you might say,
Okay.
back in
More
the day.
widespread.
Right. And so my mom finally said, we can't pay for you to have lessons if you're just going to play the songs by ear because I couldn't read music very well.
Oh,
And
interesting. And this was
mhm,
pre-Suzuki. That is fascinating.
yeah, yeah. And so it didn't have a name. I wasn't doing it the proper way.
You were playing
And
it by ear though,
so
which is,
playing it
yeah,
by ear.
definitely.
So then I would hear songs on the radio and get on the piano and play them. And
Mhm.
so anyway, how did go from so the musical instruments were like beautiful to me, and the fact that they could play by note, and so I would sing and follow the notes. You have to follow the notes, when you're singing in Handel's Messiah. You have to
Yes.
follow the notes. And
Right.
so I knew enough to be dangerous, when they go up and you go up in your voice, and I could
Yeah.
follow the notes, the pitch with my ear. And so I loved singing and I loved music. And then I think that was my first initiation to like all the big sounds
Oh
where,
yeah.
I remember sitting there thinking, 500 voices first, and then you have this full orchestra, harpsichord, and the the wood instruments and the stringed instruments, and they all played their part. It was phenomenal. And I remember thinking, I think I could even be deaf sitting in here and just feel the vibrations and be moved.
Yes.
There is a movement to music. And I just remember feeling that movement not only my emotions, but my heart and my body. It was just
Mhm.
such an experience that, and it just
Yes.
encapsulated me from a very young age.
I love that idea of, yeah, feeling even that kinesthetic aspect, which I don't think as much about that, but you're right. There really is kind of that. Um, I liked the 90s movie, Mr. Holland's Opus. I don't know if you ever saw that
Yes.
one where they do play the concert for his deaf son and like other deaf audience members, and they try to make it so that they can feel those vibrations, which is really cool.
All right. And I
Um,
remember, I don't know, I've tried to think about it knowing that this interview was coming up about it was a story that they told and they used the different musical instruments like the birds flying. You have this little piccolo, and then you have like the oboe, he was
Peter and the
like the wood.
Wolf, probably.
Maybe that's
Was it
it.
Peter? It was
Maybe.
probably Peter and the Wolf.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
gonna look that up. But I just in the back of my head remember, all the different sounds and the musical instruments to tell what they were.
Yes.
And I think music tells a story. And I was reading,
Hmm.
actually watching a TED Talk. I love TED Talks. And one of the
Hmm.
TED Talks was about, he said, we live in a musical universe and our celestial sphere creates music. And I feel like we are living in a musical universe, and our whether we feel like we're musical or not, music plays such a huge part of our lives, our emotions, and plays a part in our feelings and in the movement. And music is a story. To me, music is a
Hmm.
story.
Oh, me too. Definitely. And yeah, I love that reference to the music of the spheres. That concept, even during the medieval times, they knew that it was, they called it the music of the spheres. And I think even back in like Dante, when he was
Right.
writing, I believe it was like Paradiso or something, it
Yes.
references that. So it's been this, concept around for hundreds or probably thousands of years, probably King
Yeah.
David
Yeah.
too. So yes, I think and that's a good point that it's not just for quote unquote musicians, but that everyone can experience it
Yes.
in some fashion.
And I feel like it
What's
shapes who
Go
we
ahead.
are. It shapes who
Yes.
we are.
And the story facet to it is one of the ones that has drawn me towards it. And it sounds like for you as well.
Yes. Well, and it's communication. It's not just, to me, it's
Hmm.
inspiration. It is narration.
Right.
And it's communication, a way to communicate feeling and communicate love, communicate,
Yes.
our desires, our hopes, our dreams. It's a
Right.
way of communicating. And that's how it has inspired me and affected my writing.
I totally agree. Sometimes I feel like it even goes beyond the words. I know we're both writers, but sometimes even when you can't come up with the right word, but the right sound can create that emotion in a certain sense that you're reaching for. And then if I'm trying to write about that emotion, it's tricky because I have to come up with what word describes this musical concept that, it's hard to put into words, which is kind
Right.
of a, fun trick. What style of music do you enjoy the most?
Well, you know what? That's a hard question, Ashley. I enjoy soul music, whatever that
Oh,
might
no.
be. And it might be a different genre, right? My husband thinks country is soul music. Some of it, yeah, no. I love jazz. I love the jazz
Okay.
chords. I really like jazz chords. I appreciate classical music, of course. Um,
The jazz chords are very
musical
rich. Yeah, very rich
they
chords.
are musical theater kind of interests me.
Hmm.
Like The Greatest Showman was the movie that came out.
Yes.
Was it
Oh,
a
they're
couple
so
years
incredible.
ago? The music and the narration and the story plot, it all just, it was a soul thing for me. It moved
Oh,
me,
yeah.
it moved my emotions, it moved my mind. And I love how the music just encapsulated that whole story. So I love musical theater. American folk music is very interesting to
Oh,
me.
yes.
I love the African spirituals, and I don't know what they consider that now, but all the spirituals from our heritage, like the rich
Yes,
heritage. I feel like that community has a lot of soul that I
they
long
do.
for, and their music to me is really rich. So I kind of have a mixed love for different styles.
A lot of different styles. It keeps things
Yes.
interesting. I love different genres, and yeah, I always think it's fun to branch out and learn from
Right.
different, and sometimes
It's
do
like
mashups and
food.
mix them together. Yes,
Right. It's
yes,
like
you taste
food.
different things. And
What
okay,
is your
what's your
favorite
mood
food?
right
Like,
now?
well,
right.
let's see here. I want Mexican food right now. No, I could, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what was kind of the inspiration for No.Thing, and how did you kind of incorporate music into it? Oh, sorry, No.Thing.
Yes. I heard a song on the radio. I don't know. I wrote this song down. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. I gotta keep on moving. And I think that's by Matthew Wilder. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Okay.
But we know the song, that's from way back
And I'll
there.
put like a reference to it in my show notes so people
Okay.
can listen.
Lauren Daigle also has a song entitled
Love her.
First, and it says, "Let nothing ever come between you and I." And so I would be listening to the radio, and these songs would come on the radio, and the word nothing. And I was teaching school. I substitute teach grammar, and
Oh, fun.
yeah, and I'd be reading, and like that word would pop out at me. Nothing, nothing. I was sitting in church one Sunday, and the verse, like, God created the world from nothing, and then He hung the world upon nothing. And so this word just kept coming out at me, popping out at me, and I feel like, Ashley, there are times in life where we're struggling to find our purpose. And,
Yes.
we do cycle through seasons of life. And so in this season, I feel like I'm with a newborn, and I'm not out there, achieving any successful thing that I can point to. Yet those small moments in our lives that look like a nothing, things are really happening. And so my book was inspired by music to encourage other people in their seasons of life that they think, well, I'm not doing anything right now, but I am teaching 5 kids how to play the piano. That is something.
Yes.
And that
That's
gave me
huge.
such an inspiration, just looking at other people and their gifts and their talents when they use their season of life, how it creates enrichment for all of us and makes a better world for all of us.
I really like that, because I think that's really where, yeah, we always think we have to be doing this great thing, but I believe that God looks at even our monotonous activities and sees those as very important work. That's more important even than, the pinnacle when you're at your biggest performance or you're the best-selling author. But I think when you're changing diapers or you're, doing laundry, that He sees that
And
as a very valuable,
you're pouring into the
yes,
lives of other
contribution.
people. I know that I brought out in my book is a book of faith. It's faith-based, and a lot of people are using it for their Bible studies, and I have a leader's guide that is
Oh, nice.
just coming out
Oh,
this weekend, so
wonderful.
I'm super excited about that.
Yes.
But there's a woman that, she had nothing but a pot of oil, but then she kept pouring and pouring and pouring, and it
Oh,
enriched
yeah.
her whole community. And I feel like sometimes we feel like, oh, who wants this talent, or who needs this talent?
Right.
We feel like it has to be a big thing, right? I have to
Yes.
be, this big author. I have to be this
Right.
big musician. I have to have this big whatever. And sometimes when we hold back our gift, we think it's not big enough, yet we could be a blessing to someone else. And we forget
Mhm.
that there's something in nothing. And,
Yes.
what I think is nothing, oh, well, that's nothing. But what is in my hand? What is in my heart? And what do I have in my home that somebody else could utilize and use, and they can be enriched? And I appreciate that about your music. It's enriched my
Oh,
life.
thank you.
It's
Oh, that's
encouraged
so
me and
nice to hear
inspired
that.
me. It has.
Oh, thank you. That's always fun to hear when sometimes we don't know. And I now try to take the chance when I do listen to somebody's music or their podcast, and I'm like, oh, that really blessed me. I try to remember to reach out to them, because it's easy, I think, in this digital age to be like, okay, that blessed me, but now I moved on to something else. And now I'm trying to be more intentional, like, hey, I really loved your work, and make sure they know, so that, because as creators, I think we do need that encouragement, to hear, oh,
We do.
I feel like you are making, a difference. And so thank you. I appreciate that. That's
And to
wonderful.
be encouraged to share, even if it isn't perfect. I think, we get
Yes.
caught up in that. It has to be all this and be perfect. But we all are humans. And, nothing is really perfect anyway.
No.
But to be able to share our vulnerabilities and to be
Yes.
able to share the little tidbits that we do know, and it's very helpful to other people. I know one of my friends was sharing something the other day, and I thought, right. Why didn't I know that 20 years ago? But it was just like a little tidbit of a helpful information. I'm like, that's a great tip. And I feel like if we hold back for that big thing, that we'll miss out on so much that somebody else needs.
Exactly. That's beautiful. Well, if you had to kind of name one big message or theme from your book, what would you kind of like your readers or listeners to take away from it?
We kind of touched on it already, but I really want my readers in the audience to know that they were created on purpose for a purpose. And, a lot of times we want a thing to identify us. If I have this one thing, I'm a
Right.
musician, I'm a soccer
Yes.
mom. But what happens when your life changes and you're no longer that
Mhm.
soccer mom? What happens
Right.
when, as Tim Tebow, it's football, oh, it's baseball, oh, who am I? And I'm
Right.
trying to encourage people to, in the moment, whatever you're doing in that moment, in that season of life, do it to the best of your ability and enrich the lives of others, because that season may not be here forever. And so,
Yes.
whatever season and moment you're in this moment, do the best that you can and use whatever is in your hand. Um, I like to ask two questions, and I've been going around speaking to different groups. And sometimes
Yes.
they'll do like a Saturday event from 9 to noon with, like a luncheon in the middle. And so I'll have two different sessions. So if that's the case, um, the two questions that I like to do in the two different sessions is what thing is holding you back? So I like to kind of delve into, is there a thing that's holding you back from your purpose or maybe your passion? Is there something, is it prejudice? Is it pride? Is it perfectionism? What thing
Oh,
is
those are
holding
good
you?
examples.
What thing is holding you back? And then the second question in the second session would be, what thing are you holding back? Because like I mentioned before, if I would have waited till I was that perfect Instagrammer, if I would have
Yes.
waited till I had the perfect following to write a book, they say all
Yes.
these things you have to do before you write a book.
I know.
If I would have waited for all of those perfect scenarios, it would have held me back from releasing my message to the world. And while we want to be, at our best and do our best,
Right.
there are things that hold us back that really I don't think should hold us back, Ashley. And so
Mm-mm.
that would be my big takeaway from it. Don't let something hold you back from building a relationship with that person that you want to build a relationship. Don't let something or some grudge stand between you and someone that you need to have a conversation with. And so I just feel like we came into this life with nothing, and we're going
Mhm.
to leave this life with nothing. And so it's
Yeah.
like, what do I do in between time? Because if I'm always wishing, okay, so here's how it goes, right? We go to college and it's like, okay, when I get married, then.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, when this thing, you're always waiting for this next thing. Okay, when we get a
The
better
next
job. Okay,
stage.
when the next stage, when we have children, oh, when they're potty trained, then, and so we're always waiting for these things. And I feel like things hold us back. And
Mhm.
so just to live in the moment, live in that season, and to clear ourselves from things that are clogging up our channels from being a conduit to others around us in our God-given purpose. And I've actually, since I've written this book and it's been released, um, I'm speaking more. I'm doing more of these podcasts with people, and I've been challenged as a person to rearrange some things in my life that were kind of clogging those channels and holding me back from this
Right.
season in my life, because I've been a
Yes.
mom, I've done all the things, and now
It's a
this is a
busy
new
season.
season, and it's a little bit scary. New things are
Yes.
scary to just walk into that season, and to put away something that's been comfortable for me.
Mhm.
I've been a property manager and owner for 8 years, and
Oh,
so I
wow.
just sold my business last week,
Oh my
and
goodness.
because it was something I felt like I was supposed to do to step into this new season in my life, because it was
Mhm.
taking up so much of my
You had to
time, and
free up.
I had to free up, and I really questioned it. So I said, okay, if it sells, it sells. Would you know? And within like a week and a half, I had 2 offers. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
if I really mean to walk in this new season of life, I'm going to have to follow the steps that I lay down in my book of, freeing ourselves from those things that entangle us. And that could be a messy
Mhm.
closet, that could be a messy room, that could be like, a messy schedule. That could be something
Yes.
that just holds me back, whatever that might be. It could be something good, like a good business. And I'm not trying to get your
Right, right.
followers to sell off a business, but it
But I
was
see what
just
you're
something that
saying.
it was a new season for me. And I had to, um, put aside something that was comfortable for me that I knew the ropes to and walk in that new season. Because none of
Mhm.
us can do all the things. We can't do all of the things
No.
and serve our purpose well. And so I feel like this is my season now, and I'm going to be able to relinquish some of those things that were holding me back and walk in this new season. I can always buy new properties. I can
Mhm.
always be a property manager in
You
a
can
new
come
season of
back to
life if
it.
I decide to, in another season. But
Yes.
for this season of my life, I am definitely trying to walk into the new season.
I really like that. Yes. Well, thanks so much. Where can my listeners find you and everything that you do online, including your book? Which again, I'll
Thank
put
you.
links in the notes.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I love podcasts. I love listening to them. Going on my walks. That was part of my pandemic mental
Yes.
health, was going on daily walks,
Yes.
and I would listen to a podcast every time I would go out, and they're so inspiring. They can find me at estherpannebaker.com is my website. They can order my book through there. It's my publisher's attached to a hot link. They can order on Amazon if they wish to. And they can find me on Instagram, Esther Pannebaker. And then I'm also on Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Esther, for being on the show today. I really enjoyed getting to meet you.
Thank you so much for your music. I love hearing you. It's like Lindsay Sterling, but you can actually like see a real person that's
Oh,
playing and using their talents. It's so fun.
thank you. That's a huge compliment. I love Lindsay. So that is
I
a wonderful compliment. I saw her live for the first time a few months ago, and that was just a really cool experience. So
know
thanks. That
she's
was a huge,
phenomenal.
oh, she's
She's
wonderful.
phenomenal.
Yes. So, all right. Well, hopefully we can chat again soon.
Thank you so much, Ashley.